Welcome you and all to another episode of the Global Latin Factor podcast, where we talk about Latino everything. Thank you so much for being here. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Why not? Because we give you different stuff, not all the same things. Well, amazing stories. So subscribe right now to the Global Latin Factor podcast. Be part of the community. Be part of the movement. It's so necessary for you to be here right now enjoying these stories and us advocating for the things that we're doing here and the stories that we're sharing. And like today, we have Ramiro Luna-Hinojosa. He's an activist for so many years in activism and part of Somos Tejas. They're doing amazing work in the community. And now to the episode. Hola, ¿qué tal? Bienvenido, Ramiro.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you being here. I know, again, I always say it, but it's so true here in the DFW area, Dallas. Like, mucho tráfico. It's too much traffic sometimes, so we have to, make our way over here. But thank you. Thank you so much. And we're off 75, so that doesn't help at all with all the traffic. Pero antes de empezar, before we get started, we're going to do a segment that I like to call Preguntas al Chile. If you have not subscribed to the channel, I don't know what you're waiting for. You really are missing out on these amazing individuals here that are here in the community doing impactful things, like this gentleman that we're about to talk about, Ramiro. ¿Estás listo? Are you ready?
Ready.
Tacos o tortas?
Tacos.
Tacos. You got a preferred taco that you like to go to?
You know, good old, pastor is a good go-to for sure. Bistec, fajita, or, yeah.
Absolutely. You get the one of each.
Yeah, I'm a traditional. Yeah.
Get the rainbow of tacos in the plate. Corn tortilla or flour tortilla?
Corn, for sure.
Jarrito de qué sabor?
Tamarindo.
Gorditas or pupusas?
I like pupusas, to be quite honest. Yeah, pupusas.
Then the Salvadorian brothers did it right.
So good, once you get a good pupusa, you're like, oh man, this is...
That's true, true that. Agua de horchata, jamaica or tamarindo?
Tamarindo, yeah.
Are you team salsa verde or salsa roja?
I go for both. Like every single time that they have both salsas, I always go for both. If I had to choose, probably a good green one. Yeah.
You're funny that you say that because our guest yesterday said the same thing. She likes to mix both of them at the same time.
Oh, yeah,
together.
For sure. Yeah.
Claro que sí. Okay, this is going to be, maybe you remember or you know what kind of dishes they are because of where you're from. Carne asada de Monterrey style or discada norteña?
Carne asada.
Carne asada?
Carne asada, yeah.
Cabrito o tacos de trompo?
Tacos de trompo.
Cabrito, menudo o pozole?
Depends what day it is. If it's a Sunday morning, some good old menudo always, it's a good fix. But pozole, yeah, so... Pozole, if it's... pozole.
Pozole. It's about that season right now. Yeah. It's getting a little colder. Man, some great pozole that goes great. Valentina, Tabasco, Cholula, or Tapatio hot sauce?
Valentina all day, every day.
Black label?
I like the original. My dog's name is actually Valentina.
Get out of here, for real? Yeah. People don't know. They think that I make it up because they think my last name's Valentin, but my first name's Crispin. My middle name is Valentin. So it's not like made up. They think it's my last name.
There's a really good story behind Valentina. She was this revolutionary in Mexico. So
it's one of sometimes we do single episodes, we call it, and we discuss. And I had seen a post about it on Facebook talking about the story of the Valentina sauce and her actual story based off a real person, and it was pretty neat.
Yeah, so that's why my dog's name is Valentina.
Tell me a little bit about it since we're talking about it. Later on, I'll expand on that, but tell me about the Valentina story.
So the hot sauce was actually named after a Mexican revolutionary. And it was this young woman who dressed in a man's uniform and took on the ranks. And she actually did so well that I think at one point she was about to be promoted, and that's whenever they found out that she was actually a female as opposed to a man.
So she was a Mulan before Mulan was a Mulan?
She was like our Mexican Mulan. So,
what?
Yeah, beautiful
That's
story.
Neat.
True story too. So.
Awesome. I heard a little bit about it. As I remember, I saw the post, but I didn't know a little bit more of the details. But that's pretty neat. I'm definitely going to cover her for sure. Okay, so when you, let's say you want to celebrate something, let's say you were trying to fight for something that the immigrants really need to win on or anything like that, do you like to dance cumbia, salsa merengue, or some bachata?
Maybe some cumbia for sure. But I like to listen to some like rancheras or some hip hop, something like, to definitely get me in that song.
Get you in that groove.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I don't know, something about the energy left behind, because the same thing for our guest Nancy, she liked a little bit more of a different type of music, more like alternative type.
Yeah, or some corridos or something that just hits hard. You're like, man, I'm about to,
I'm about to. That's funny. A dish that people must try from Monterrey. If you go to Monterrey or somebody tells you about Monterrey, you must definitely got to give this dish a try. What could that be?
I'm a big fan of tostadas silverias.
Mm-hmm.
So tostada silveria is it's just a straight tostada with sour cream, shredded chicken, and guacamole. And it's so simple, but it just hits the spot. And I feel like it's healthy. I tell myself it's healthy.
It's healthy.
Yeah,
you got your good fats. You got chickens, lean. You got the
protein,
tortilla, which is not a lot of grease. Depending, I think it is.
Yeah,
I think tacos are healthy too.
I agree.
Balanced diet for our cultura, our gente, not a European diet type for our gut. I think it's better. So, okay. So when you hear the word Latino, Latina, Latinx, I mean, just because the podcast name is the Global Latin Factor, por favor, don't think that we're gonna take it offensive if you don't like the term. But for you, when you hear the word Latino or Latino, Latinx, what's the first thoughts that come to your mind to you?
I think it's our community and who we represent.
Right.
And for me, I agree. A lot of times it's just semantics on how do they describe us. But ultimately, like, whenever I think about our people, it's just so much culture and diversity and depth. I think whenever you're asking me those questions, it was very indicative of our community and our culture and our contribution, because it's so deep in gastronomy and art and all the elements that make up culture. That's kind of like what I think of. When
people were asking me why the Global Latin Factor, or what does it mean to me, it's like the Global Latin Factor is the imprint of our community to the entire world.
Oh, yeah.
And like literally today, you probably, if you're listening to this right now, you ask yourself, have I run into some salsa? Have I run into some chocolate? Have I run into some reggaeton? And it was our contribution. Pizza, without tomato that came from the Americas, you would not have pizza currently right now.
Yeah, I mean, so corn is everywhere, and we're the motherland of corn. So I definitely fully agree with that notion. Like, for us, it's beautiful to see how there's so many things that we've impacted the whole world with, and so yeah.
I mean, we're beyond powerful with that. We literally feed the world, give the world spice, and keep it excited, not so boring and dull.
Right.
Okay, so for you, do you care if anybody calls you Latino? Do you prefer another term, human being, anything else?
I feel like what I really care more about is like the treatment as opposed to like how they address. As long as there's no disrespectful tone in any of that space. Yeah, because again, I think a lot of times we get caught up in some of the semantics of elements that you're like, well, what's really being going on at the root of like how we're being treated, equity and other elements. And so I feel like, I mean, I go with Latino, Mexican American, immigrant. I mean, I am brown, so it's just like person of color. So, yeah.
I like it. Okay, so let's start a little bit of the interview in your story. You were 7 years old when you arrived to the U.S., but prior to that, were you living in Monterrey, or you were living elsewhere at that time?
Yeah, no, I'm from Monterrey. My whole family lived there until we were 7 or so. When I was 7, I'm the youngest of 3 children, and first my dad came to the United States, got settled here for a while, and then right after being settled here, he felt like, yeah, it's time for the whole family to come together. And
Right.
We came here we came to Laredo for 2 years. Then from Laredo, I came to Oak Cliff. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so before, I know 7 years old is kind of young, but if you can recall as much as possible your earlier years in Mexico, Monterrey specifically, what do you remember the most out of those times, that time growing up in that? Is it vague, or do you remember something very vividly?
I do remember some vivid pieces. I remember how much fun and just carefree, and it was a really good place to be a young kid, I would say, just because I was a travieso. I mean, and it's funny because I still have colleagues and people that we consider family from Monterrey that they're like, oh yeah, I remember Ramiro, and he was a pelonero or whatever. You know, they will say like little things about like how I used to be. And I do remember having my little young, friends, and just I remember the holidays like Christmas in Mexico is a whole different vibe.
Oh yeah.
Like,
yeah.
you over there, you can get pop fireworks, and so
Posadas everywhere, ponche.
The food, so I definitely remember like a very vibrant way of living,
Yeah, absolutely. During that time, do you remember any of those living that way, or any examples of people that could kind of sort of you saw examples of something that you might want to do in the future, or nothing like that? Or that was kind of too young still?
My mother was a really good example of what it meant to give voice to your community. I remember even as a nurse, she would fight for the rights of the nurses at some point. I actually remember her picking a fight one time with a bus driver, and to me that was like, I think whenever she would tell us a story, I've always felt like, a lot of times who we are is sometimes even in our genetics, or knowing that we come from people who were fighters, and
right.
and then our parents, to me, showed me a very good example of just speaking, giving your voice and just standing up. And so,
can you share the story of us on the bus? What happened exactly? How did it all get started?
She don't get mad, but I think she'll be okay.
If you want to.
No, actually, it's a funny story, and I'm very proud of her for this.
Claro, because whenever you're ready, just let us know.
Yeah, she. So I, as a young kid, I had asthma, and so there used to be a bus route where they would park their buses right in front of our house, and so she would ask them, whenever you're parked there, just turn your bus off, as opposed to having the fumes.
Yeah, especially if you got a kid with asthma.
And so I guess the bus drivers wouldn't listen to her. And one day she just got in and grabbed one of the bus drivers and just threw the keys, like far and stuff. To the point that they had to, they called the cops, and they took, they had to have court in order to see what was going to be the outcome of it. And so she's having to talk to a judge. She was like, look at me, I'm this, small, and the bus driver was a big burly man, and she's like, do you really think I'll go ahead and pick a fight with this man? So I think it was her, being smart and knowing like, hey, you have to play different roles whenever you have to, but you always have to stand up for family, for community, and do what's right. And I think it is that, like I said, my family, they come from, my great grandfather was a revolutionary as well. So
nice.
So knowing that I come from a community or a family that knew to do right. My dad was a very hardworking man, and I used to remember he is a very hardworking man, and I remember how much he gave back to even our local neighborhood. And so for my inspiration of advocacy and service has been from both sides of the family, I would say.
That's awesome. Okay, so you finally get to the U.S., have to wait a little bit longer before you actually make it to Texas. During that time, even though you already crossed over, you have to wait for the right time. During that time, I remember you were saying on an interview something about, I don't know if during that time, but it felt like one day you said that I'm going to be big enough that I'm going to have a voice to speak for others. Do you remember that?
I would say if there was a pivotal moment when I knew there was a reason for advocacy or to be an activist, and I didn't know what the term was. I just knew that there should be people or groups that people could turn to. And it was whenever one of my family members was deported, and and coming home not to see him there, and kind of like knowing the implications and how that disrupted the whole family structure. I was a young kid. I was in middle school, and I think seeing that firsthand really, one, made me realize the dangers of my life as an undocumented immigrant, and just the need for people to turn to, and I say that because a lot of times I think we don't know that there's support out there, or that you're not alone. And as somebody who's an undocumented immigrant or who has been undocumented, there is a need for more leaders. There is support, but there's also a need for more support. And that's really, I think, to me, what was a pivotal moment in my life to realize whenever I get older, I want to make sure I fight for those who don't always have a voice, who are not always seen, and to also free our people in the scope of opportunities and how we're perceived,
Right.
Because for somebody to have, deported my family, and for them to be seen as criminals or a nuisance, whenever, he's a hardworking man who's providing for his family, who's doing everything that's right except by crossing or making that, civil offense. But other than that, so yeah, I would say that definitely was one of the pivotal moments of my life.
Do you understand what was happening, knowing that he got deported? You got the whole concept of what happened?
Oh yeah, very much so. I am very grateful for my families that they never really hid our existence and like the fragility of our freedom. And I say that because for a very long time I lived separated from my mother for close to 20 years. She stayed in Mexico while we lived in the United States. And so I knew that there was a reason behind it. It wasn't because she didn't want to live with us. It was because of fear of, what would happen if something were if our family was ever disrupted and we had to ever go back to Mexico. She was a nurse, so she wanted to continue knowing that there was some kind of safety net for us.
That's interesting that she made that type of decision, knowing also, again, as to mention the attorney gentleman you were talking when you were sharing that story, that she had the foresight to be able to know that possibly could something happen, but you had somewhere to go, somewhere to stay in case something did happen, right?
Yeah, and I feel like, one, she was very wise in that regard, but also a wisdom that I didn't understand at first. I think a lot of times I saw it more as paranoia of saying, like, no, we'll be okay, and then until it happens and you're like, oh wow, she was right. And I think that also reaffirmed her wanting to stay in Mexico for that period of time. And it wasn't until our family became more safe because we had people that became citizens and residents within our family. So having like my dad be a resident and all that, and finally made her decide yes this time.
Did you miss your mom at that time? Did it dawn on you at all?
Terribly so. Yeah, I remember how difficult it was. I also say I would say that shaped me tremendously, and I say that because I remember vividly that being one of the most painful experiences of my childhood, because there were times that she would come back to pay us a visit for as long as the nurses, in her profession would allow them to have like a vacation. So there were times that she would get permits to come and pay us visits. And I remember how difficult it was for us to kind of like bid her goodbye as she left to Mexico, not knowing like when she would return, how long she'll be able to, or, how long will she be there for.
Right.
And I remember growing up from like 9-10 years old all the way to 20 and seeing the transition of, first it was my dad that would drop her off, then my brother became older to get a license to be the one to drop her off, then I was the one that dropped her off. And I remember this is such a cruel existence that I don't want to ever normalize. I don't ever want to be okay with saying, okay, this is just the way it is. And also beyond the scope of my family, to know that there are so many families that are separated because of a system that is just antiquated, because of a system that is cruel, and a system that's just broken in many ways. And the human implication is one that is we don't really understand.
We'll talk more deeper in that system itself. I have one additional question in that part. Whenever you were going through those struggles, the dark times, knowing that you were out without your mom because she made a decision for the better of you, what kept you what pushed you forward? What inspired you? Where did you drew energy and kind of like a little bit of calmness to keep moving forward and become a better person?
My dad was a very strong man in the sense of knowing that I had a good role model and example to see as to why I needed to make sure that I didn't cause too much trouble. And I say that because, also if you're growing up in the side of Oak Cliff side of, Dallas, there's
it's a lot of options to not do the right thing sometimes.
And it's fun sometimes not doing the right thing with. And I say that in the sense of you're young, and a lot of times I give a lot of people from our community the grace that they deserve in the sense of saying like, hey, we grew up in very difficult times, and we have so much talent out there in our neighborhoods that I'm grateful that I feel that the fear of knowing like if I ever get in trouble is not a fine, it could be deportation for me. And I feel like having a good example from my father and my brother and sister, they were also really good people. And actually even my friends from the neighborhood, they may have not always done, the most proper things, but their character were good, strong characters to just make sure that I was always doing good for my people,
Yeah, aren't we allowed to have those good characters and more be allowed to make mistakes and grow out of those? Because how can we just go through life being perfect? How we ever going to grow if we don't ever mess up?
And I think that's also what's been beautiful about working in the community is that you see so many good people that everyone has their character flaw, I think a lot of times we hyper fixate on whatever that flaw is, not to see their humanity or see their needs and such. And so, I definitely agree that and there's also so much need for leaders that have those character flaws, that understand how to deal with people that are also in that struggle,
Awesome. Okay, as far as your path, going to school and everything, did you decide to go to college, pursue?
Yeah, and it was something that, again, at first it was more like I wasn't fully sold on the idea. Once I got into school, I really fell in love with the courses that I was taking, but soon thereafter, I really discovered my true love, and that was advocacy, activism, organizing. Because fresh into college, freshman year, I discovered LULAC, and after that, I definitely paid way more attention to my activism than my academia.
Okay, explain to me the acronym for LULAC. What does it stand for, and what exactly was it that you saw there that just got your whole attention?
Yeah, I mean, to this day, I have a lot of respect and appreciation for LULAC in many ways. LULAC stands for League of United Latin American Citizens. Is the oldest and the largest Latino civil rights organization in the country, and they gave me a platform. I became a member, and soon within the first year and two, I was already an officer, to the point that I had a district position, then a statewide position as a young collegiate student, and I feel like that place really allowed me to understand the mechanics of politics, and like I said, it's a big jump from going from a community that you're just trying to get by to being like, okay, what does it mean to fight for your community or to push for immigrant rights? And a lot of it was my individual reading that I was able to come across, and then a lot of it was some of the teachings that I learned early on from LULAC.
What was the most impactful read that you did at that time that really shaped what you wanted to do?
There was this book called The Life of Mahatma Gandhi by Louis Fisher. And I was, I think sometimes good books, it's like almost like you find each other, you find something that you're supposed to read, and at that time, I remember I told myself, you know what, it's time, I need to be an activist. But I was like, what does that even mean? How do I even start? And I had heard of, Mahatma Gandhi just through, just education pieces, but I never really dove into who he was. And then one time I was able to come across a writing from Martin Luther King, and then I was reading on César Chávez, and they both get credited Mahatma Gandhi as being their, their inspiration. And I was like, well, let me go to the source. And for somebody that wasn't like a well-read person, or that I wouldn't pick up books just for the sake of reading on my own. It's a pretty, good-sized book, and yeah, just fell in love with his philosophy, his way of living his life, and I used it as like my roadmap in the initial stages of my advocacy and activism and organizing.
What is one philosophy that you still sticks to you to this day?
I don't know if I can pronounce it right, but it's called Sarigraha, and it's truth force and love force. And I think his whole concept was experiments with truth. And I say truth because in the whole scope of the work that we're doing, I have a truth that is very dear to my life, which is, that our community deserves equity, dignity, freedom, and so that's why the work that I do is to exemplify that, to say, this is what happens whenever, we have more resources to these neighborhoods. They're going to flourish. It's not because of, and so all that to say is that, and then just knowing that it was going to be, whenever I read his full story, it showed how long it took, and how it's not going to be something that's going to be won overnight, and a lot of times you're going to have losses. And so I think just knowing like there was a person that encountered tremendous losses and still continued on his journey, and the fact that they won without, they say that it's one of the few times where you win a battle without firing a gunshot or a firearm. And so that was his way of winning without fighting, in a sense, and I thought it was beautiful. It was a beautiful concept.
That's awesome. So LULAC, during this time, you're finding these reads as well. For you, is it the purpose, stay at school and keep going, or LULAC just took over everything that you wanted to do because that's the passion that you found?
Yeah.
How was it?
Advocacy definitely took my that's why I was like, that's when I found my true love.
Awesome.
Because even to this day, advocacy and activism, organizing, I would say is my true love. That's what I do, and sometimes I don't have enough balance or harmony in my life because I dedicate my life to my craft or what I enjoy.
For people who don't know what those terms are necessarily, can you kind of explain to us what it is for somebody to do something like that?
In regards to advocacy and organizing, and so advocacy and organizing and activism are sometimes interchangeable terms that people use. A lot of times for me, the differentiator is like, whenever you're advocating, a lot of times has to do with either legislation or policy or anything that has to do with propositions. And so the concept of fighting for rights through that process of different administrations that you have to go through. Activism, sometimes I relate it more to the term of activism of grassroots, doing actions. I mean, in the scope of activism that I've done has been direct action from marches, protests, civil disobedience, planned arrests, hunger strikes. We've done all kinds of gamuts into that school of work, I would say. And then organizing is also very grassroots. Is whenever you mobilize beyond just one action, but really give power through the community by them knowing their leadership and how they can, fight for their rights through mobilizing different communities long term.
Awesome. And Grassroots itself entails the community. So you're literally going door to door and talking to people and getting meetings going to get them going in whatever that you want to, advocate, talk about, gather. Is that correct?
Very much so. And like I said, it's finding like the light in every single person for them to light more than, their immediate surrounding. I think a lot of times in the scope of organizing, that's probably one of my biggest gifts, is that helping other community members know that there's not only a need, but they have this very powerful talent that if they utilize it, it can give life to so much beyond, themselves or.
Okay, that's awesome. So you also, with doing the example of doing the things, you also have to kind of sort of like inspire other ones to be able to see their light and what else they can do in the community as well for the same purpose. Okay, after you leave LULAC, it's like LULAC is like schooling. You learn a lot of the system. You learn a lot exactly what activism means. Working this all the way to the point to where you're, like you said, as high as you've gotten. But then after that, you kind of sort of wanted to go a different way, right? What else presented itself after that with you and a few group of individuals around that time?
Yeah, so I at that time I decided that it was time for us to be broader or more radical than sometimes the parameters of more established organization. And so we created a group called the North Texas Dream Team. And it was
one more time,
North Texas Dream Team.
And when we talk about radical, that term sometimes in the news gets twisted and looked at as the most evil thing possible that you can think of. When you talk about radical, what does that mean to you?
To me, radical is the most sensible thing that you could be doing in this, day and age. And I say that because, for example, to say ceasefire, that's radical. And to me, I'm like, no, you're saying let's not create a genocide in Palestine. Like you're saying, let's stop the war, DEI is seen as radical, and it stands for development, equity, and inclusion. The fact that you say our community should not have big polluters in their neighborhood, and that's seen as radical, and it's like, no, that's the most sensible thing that you can. And so I think we definitely show the need and how much our community's pain. And I think whenever we show community's pain, and that pegs people to say, oh, that person's radical, or they're not, they're being too extreme. But I feel it's us showing how extreme it is that our communities doesn't have equity, opportunities, freedoms. And so
so these days in 2025, radical could be literally doing just slightly outside of the norm, and you not conforming with just the status quo of what people want you to do for your community, and just wanting to do the right thing and have the right access, and all of a sudden that becomes kind of like a radical idea. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, even the way that people peg individuals, like whenever I don't know, I think about a lot of, like I said, terms that people just throw around of like being like, Antifa. To me, it's like, well, to me that just means anti-fascism, and fascism is not right. And
it's literally an idea. It's not even an actual group.
Exactly.
Itself.
There's no group that exists. It's just something that people just came up to and said, hey, there's this group that's called this. And it's like, no, maybe there's people that are fighting against fascism, but there's definitely a huge media spin on making things that are not right, seem that, that's right, or the people that are fighting for freedoms to this, do not give us the respect or to call us radicals whenever we're not. Yeah.
That's crazy. Like itself, when I heard about it, and what does that mean? Oh, is it like a little organization?
Yeah,
like,
all
of a sudden everybody goes to Ginkgo or whatever, you print stuff out and all looks the same. Oh, they must be organized now just because they have the same signs or things like that. I'm like, wow, that's trippy. That's interesting. Okay, so tell me about the group now that you're in the new group that y'all began with a few of your colleagues, right?
Yeah, so it was a small group of our friends, and we wanted to be more, in the sense, radical too. And that, by that I mean to really push the limits for the for the Dream Act. And so, and the Dream Act it was a bill that would have given students a pathway to citizenship as long as they met certain requirements, which is like they must have been here as youth, no criminal record, going to college. So really giving an opportunity to some of the cream of the crop of our community to have pathway to citizenship that may have not, that are without status here. And so with this group of college students, we were like, well, let's put everything that we have into fighting for these for this piece of legislation, to advocate and become activists and organize. So to use all these tools at our disposal, and we did. Like, we started with very sensible tactics, and we were like, well, let's do calls and phone call and call our representative and they were like, well, that's not getting their attention, so let's get a postcard writing campaign. I remember we used to collect postcards, and we're like, we're gonna get 1,000 postcards so that they know that our community is behind us, and then that wouldn't get their attention. And we're like, you know what, let's do a sit-in. And so we ended up saying, well, let's just stay inside. And that's whenever the more like acts of civil disobedience took place. And it was inspired by the civil rights movement, taking pages from Mahatma Gandhi's teaching and such. And so, like, because we did hunger strikes, we did fast. I participated in several fasts myself that were definitely difficult. And but all that to say was, North Texas Dream Team gave me the platform to one, move more free to do whatever activism I wanted, and just be more authentic within our work. And I did that for a few years until deferred action. And I think a lot of times people say, well, Obama gave us deferred action, and that's not the full story. I think there was a lot of work that went into it, in the sense of making sure that we're applying pressure not only to the Republican Party, to the Democratic Party, to show that there were different ways to have that freedom, until finally we were able to accomplish our goal. And actually, I wouldn't say accomplish our goal.
You have a very interesting take when it comes to Dreamer term, that whole system itself that you had mentioned before in a podcast. Can you tell me what is your take on that in regards to what kind of it feels like? You're not a citizen technically, but you're okay to be here temporarily as a resident, but there's not really no answer or pathway technically yet for you to be, a residency or a citizen eventually, right? Do you remember what you were talking about at that time?
I'm not sure what term I use sometimes.
It was but in general, the feeling of it. So what does it feel like to be a dreamer?
I mean, it is a very cruel existence, in the sense that you're not even a second-class citizen, because even that term citizen doesn't exist, or doesn't apply to us.
Right.
And second-class, in the sense, is the way that we're treated. And it's a very cruel existence, because we're treated in a manner of having limitations. Whenever people say, well, if you're undocumented, you just don't have ID or a license. But ID and a license is much more than just that piece of paper. It's what it represents, license, mobility, being able to move freely with safety, security, without fear. That is so important and so at the stake of our human dignity. Whenever they say, well, you don't have an ID, no, it's access to so many elements. It's the fact that I'm not able to identify myself freely without being persecuted, or the fact that I have to hide, and again, I think that's the cruelty, is that they cast us in the shadows, knowing the brilliance that we bring. Like, whenever we talk about like Latino, and we started this conversation of the gift that we have given the world, I think it's a gift it's the gift that keeps on giving, I guess, for lack of,
of course,
for the right term. And I say that because so much more and so much contributions are being done on a daily basis. And I think one of my biggest pain points is knowing how much, talent sometimes is not given the platform to really thrive. And I think it's something that it's a detriment to society as a whole,
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know too much about LULAC, but I know that sometimes they walk a fine line to be a certain way, and it doesn't give you the liberty of you doing the things that you want. So a little bit more of like, this is not working, we're doing it. We need to do a little bit more of outside of the box per se to be able to do some movement, and that's the reason maybe why you veered off at that time.
Yeah, that's exactly a good observation, because again, I feel like whenever I use the term radical, it was in that scope, and I think radical really is being authentically unapologetic of your existence and what you deserve, just as your home, just for human nature, what and so in that scope, I was very open to saying, if we want to fight against these legislators and call them out in their face, and I didn't want to risk, playing nice, or even the whole concept or construct of assimilation. That's not something that, to me, they rubs me the wrong way. I feel like you can be authentic and you can appreciate different elements without having to say, I'm going to be exactly the way that you want me to be. It doesn't mean that, that you can't participate in all these other customs. It means that you can move freely and be what makes you feel the best. And so within the scope of our advocacy and activism, we wanted to be as authentically, unapologetically us, and say we want to fight for our dreamer movement or for our dreamer community. We want to create a movement that is our own.
Yeah.
If we want to do a hunger strike outside a detention center or a processing center, we can, and we don't have to ask anyone for permission. And that's literally exactly what we did. There were times that we did hunger strikes right outside the detention center, and we were like, we're gonna be here, and we don't have to answer to any other entity outside of the group that we're creating.
That's awesome. It's very interesting what you were saying, that it's sounds so unnatural to be able to have somebody be in conform and be just in line in this and cannot be outside of that, because that looks like you're doing some weird stuff instead of just, it just sounds so unnatural for an individual, an entity to be able to just keep you there and just be that in the way that they want it to be, the way that they want to mold you, instead of being free and able to move however you want to. So weird. I'm not talking about LULAC, I'm talking in general in regards to the system.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think it's sometimes part of also like the nonprofit industrial complex that, and I say that because as as now I'm part of Somos Tejas, it was such a deliberate attempt to make sure that things where I was like, we could improve this whenever, it's our turn to build our own structure. Because, yes, there are so many limitations that we have as organizations. And I say we because I'm still in that experiments of truth of being like, how do I make sure that I maintain integrity? Or, my staff till this day, we still get challenged on like, are we doing the best way? Are we being the best stewards of resources? Are we doing good for our people?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay, let's get to Somos Tejas, 501c4.
Yeah, and actually it's a multi-entity nonprofit in the sense that we have a fiscal sponsor for our C3 and we have a C4. So,
awesome.
so we have both.
Can you explain us the difference?
That's a really good question. So we started as a C4, and so just so people know what the construct of a C4 nonprofit entails, is that it's a nonprofit that focuses or that works on advocacy, or that can do advocacy, that can make endorsements if they so wish.
For politicians, because sometimes you can't if you're a nonprofit. Right?
Yes, okay. we can. There's tax limitations in that regard.
Gotcha.
But you're able to move more freely to advocate for policies or for positions, and we've been very successful in some of the propositions. Like we help promote a proposition to decriminalize cannabis to a certain degree here in the city of Dallas. We passed a proposition to help ensure that non-citizens are also able to serve in boards and commissions that are appointed by the city of Dallas. And so that's what a C4 entails, is that you're a nonprofit that also can have some political affiliation.
Gotcha.
A C3 nonprofit is a nonprofit that cannot do any type of endorsement or really shouldn't dabble too much in the policies or politics of things. And their focus is mostly on resources and education. And so we started because at the beginning stages of the organization, I felt like there was a need for us to really flex our political power and to show our community what it meant to advocate beyond the scope of voting, because a lot of times it's like, oh, well, I can't vote, so I don't have a voice. And it's like, no, you still have a voice regardless of whether you're a citizen or not a citizen, whether you're of age, whether you're not 18 yet and can't vote. And so I wanted to create an organization that showed the holistic approach to civic engagement. And the difficulty was that we were born right in the heels of COVID and the quarantine.
Okay, let's touch a little bit more on that part, because you have done some remarkable parts as far as number wise goes. But before that, the idea, to my understanding, whenever you were creating, I believe it was your inception of the idea to create it, and then of course you got other people involved, and it was more of like, what if there was a organization that was treated like a politician, like running a campaign, but it wouldn't be like a particular person. It would be that the entire entity as a whole will be able to do all these other things. Is that how sort of the idea came about?
Yeah, that's a really good. Yes, you actually hit it in the sense of like, I saw campaigns flawed by design in three main elements, and I created Somos Tejas to address those three elements. And so, time, space, and resources to me were elements where we could grow tremendously. And I say that because whenever you run a campaign, and I used to run campaigns as before Somos Tejas, and you're limited to a specific time of whatever the candidate runs for. You're focusing in that district, and you're using your time to focus on the communities that are turning out the most, because you want to invest your resources and energy on those communities. Unfortunately, a lot of times those communities don't look like our neighborhoods. They don't look like us. And so to me, it was a science that I didn't agree with, in the sense of saying like, well, if we're looking for true empowerment, then we are not going to run the campaigns traditional manner, because we're not looking to have traditional voters turn out. We're looking for what they call low propensity voters, or non-traditional or first-time voters. And so I was thinking, well, what does it look like if we create a year-round campaign that never ends? And instead of having the candidate at the helm, we have the community at the helm. And if it's less transactional and really, in depth. And so I wanted to focus on the education piece of it. And that's really what gave birth to that, to say, well, let's address some of the and I wanted it to be the answer to not a question, but to an attack that I feel we often have. And I say that an attack because people say, oh, it's voter apathy. And to me, I see that as an attack against our community, because if you're saying you're apathetic, that means that we don't care. But honestly, we are very caring people. It was a system that was designed for us not to be participants of it. In its inception, the system of voting participation did not have us in mind.
Did not have us in mind at all.
Exactly. And so we haven't been invested in. The information, for the most part, had it been placed in our language, it's not culturally appealing to us. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Like, there's elements where the communities that we see as voting deserts or food deserts, and it's so like our communities are working so hard to survive. And so you have so many layers of, if you were to look into those same deserts, there's also the areas that have less broadband connectivity access. And so it's so many things that you're like, well, I need to address it more than the space of we're not voting. It's like, no, let's address it as what is the root cause. And that really is what gave birth to this C3 space, to say, oh, this is just the tip of the iceberg. And I say that because whenever I mention how we were born at the cusp, or whenever COVID started, that's what made me realize, no, we need to do more. And so we transitioned the whole experience from civics to community.
And that's when about the 20,000 doors knocking that your organization did, in order to, what were you doing at that time? You were doing multiple things when you were doing that, right?
Yeah. So again, it was like, well, let's, before COVID, we had the idea of a year-round campaign that didn't focus on the candidate. It was focusing on the community. And we started knocking on doors then for the sake of voter turnout and education.
Gotcha.
COVID hit, and we were, rightfully so, saying, well, it doesn't make sense for us to focus still on voting whenever our communities need more than that. We need PPE, vaccine, information, all these other elements to make sure that they're safe.
Right.
And so we transitioned all of our energy from voting to that, to make sure that people had access to PPEs, to, face masks, to anything that could help them continue to survive. And so the 20,000 initial doors, part of them were COVID, then we transitioned to vaccines. And in the midst of that, there was also census information. And so I think that's really what gave Somos like the life that it currently has now, where till this day we still do door knocks, and it's very organic. At times we were door knocking to let people know, hey, did you know that there's this program called the Affordable Connectivity Program that gives you access to free internet for a year. Sometimes we focus on the census, whatever organic need is. We just use tools from campaigns to support our people.
I know you said it's fairly natural, but in our Latino community, somebody knocking on your door is very strange.
Yeah, it's very weird.
Because a lot of the times, no offense, my folks, but a lot of the times it's Jehovah's Witness there knocking on your door, or somebody trying to sell you something. So how you maneuver those to be able to be, have them to be more open to you, to be able to listen, at least for a couple of seconds for you to give them some information?
Yeah, and actually I think that's been part of our secret sauce in the sense that we've been an organization that also does that focuses on culture. So sometimes we'll say, hey, come out and vote because we're throwing a party and we're gonna have tamales and champorrado, and so, or we'll say we're out here just giving you information to receive free vaccines. And so I think the fact that people saw us as more than just this transactional, we need your vote for this election of a lifetime, and say, no, like, we just want to hear from you.
Pachanga for votos was a very neat idea you came out with, and it's awesome.
Sure. We're already planning the next one. The next one's going to be so cool. Like,
let me know if you need some. I'll be happy to help in each which way I can.
Come through February 21st.
Yeah, I'd be love to be part of it. I know the organization, but whatever you need me to contribute, because I have some hidden talents and gifts, I'll be happy to contribute as much as I can.
I'll go ahead and give y'all like a sneak, like y'all will be the first organization to hear it, but we're already planning the next pachanga, and we haven't said it out loud yet, but I'm free to say it to y'all. So February 21st at Martin Weeks Park is what we're planning for. God willing, we'll be able to put together an amazing event for y'all, and it'll be the same thing where this time we want to have like almost like a food truck show. Like, we have some really cool ideas that we're playing with, and it's more than just voting. Like I said, we'll be providing tons of resources. We're trying to get either some, free heaters or free raffles of things like that. And I say heaters because it's going to be in February. It's going to be colder, so our community's needs would, be different and such. But the reason why we have it in February is because it is going to be the Saturday of early voting for the primary, and we want to make sure that our people, we have to celebrate whether anything is going on, and we have good music and food. It's
victories or defeats, we still partake.
Exactly. And so I want us to be able to vote in the same manner,
Yeah, that's true. I like the way that you put events together as far as the way you organize it. We're talking about lucha libre and different things like that is just a little bit outside of your typical thing, and not more of like, I need your vote, come over here and give me your vote, and don't worry about it. I don't know you anymore. You know what I mean? So I like the way that y'all do it as far as, and to create habit of us being a normal thing to be able to vote, because that's not something that, as you mentioned earlier, was included. We were not included in that. Now we have to kind of create a habit of like, hey, get over here and do your part. But still, let's have a good time at it.
Yeah, and and if we're gonna do it, we gotta do it our way, with some sazon, with some good music. So yeah, you're very, very. I'm glad that you perceive that, because that's what our aim is. It's like, if we're about to break ground into these new spaces, we're not gonna do it by, like I said, fully assimilating to these spaces. We're gonna say, oh, we're here. We're gonna have some lucha libre. We're gonna have some cumbias playing, and we're gonna say, we're taking a seat in the table, but as our most authentic self.
But isn't it us though? We always innovators. Marucha cannot just be a Maruchan. We have to add all kinds of other stuff to it. You know what I mean? We have to just make different stuff of our own, the way we want to make it, not how it is. It's just like, seems like it's in our DNA forever.
I fully agree.
You were also part of that time where the 2,300 kids had to be escorted at one time, undocumented, if I'm not mistaken? Were you part of the ones that were having to help with that?
Yeah, I mean, so I've been an advocate now, an activist for 20 years, and my goal was always to follow the footsteps of those great leaders that I read, in my younger years. And I say that because every time that there was some fight in our doorstep and there was a need for people to speak up or organize around or advocate, that was, how whatever platform we could use, we used it at that time. So, yes, we've been involved with numerous.
Awesome. Okay, so for Somos Tejas in 2025, I know you have the pachanga going on for the voting, but is there any other things that you're working on that people should be on the lookout for, or things that you might see in the future that maybe hasn't been spoken yet that you want to see Somos Tejas?
Yeah, I mean, we're planning for 2026 already, and I'm really excited that we have some time to really put together ideas so that for next year, we have a really well curated program for our communities, young leaders, and for the needs of our people. And I say that young leaders in the sense that we have a fellowship program that we're going to be launching pretty soon in the next couple of weeks.
What does that mean? What does that entail?
So the fellowship is like a scholarship program, but it also infuses this concept of like internship as well, in the sense that people are learning an actual the academia of the social movement. So long story short, I had a few educators and professors come together and put a college level course for us to give through Somos Tejas. And this one is a 30-week course that includes the civil rights movement, teachings of civics. It includes financial literacy. It includes mental health. And so it's a very holistic, like, different themes that we touch on.
Right.
And what I really enjoy about it is that it has a very dense element of academia, but it's also tied with very heavy work of practicum. They're also knocking on doors. They're also helping us organize. And so we're going to have college and high school students partake in this program, but they're getting paid. So college students will receive a $3,000, stipend for being involved with us. And they get to see some really cool things, experience some really strong work. And so we're going to be relaunching that next year. We just finished one of our latest classes this year, where we had 15 students really do some really cool stuff in the Capitol.
Yeah.
Since next year is not a legislative year, instead of following the legislative cycle, they're going to follow the election cycle. And so we're going to alternate every other year. Sometimes they'll follow the election cycle, sometimes they'll follow the legislative cycle. And in the midst of that, they're also learning. Again, a lot of the work that we do is inspired by the civil rights movement. So like Black Panthers used to be like, well, we're going to teach our students our history. And so for us, we were like, well, let's teach our community also our history, who we are. And
so is it more Hispanic, Latino-based type of themes, or not necessarily?
It has quite a bit of Latino Hispanic themes, but it's not confined to that. We do a lot of themes that talk about the AAPI community, our Black brothers and sisters. We talk about LGBTQ rights. So it's a very maybe it's like a study in the humanities in that space, where it's like and it's not just for Latinos. Like, we had a very diverse group of students, and we really highly encourage diversity. So
in addition to getting the money, the experience, is there any certification that you get off it, and why is it important for the kids to see these as well?
I think it's a really cool experience because we're also hoping to train. We are training the future leaders, and I don't know if future leaders is the right term, because they're already the leaders. We're just continuing their journey of leadership, and a lot of them are now working in campaigns. They learn the mechanics of what it is to work in the movement and in politics and civics. I foresee several of them one day running for office. And so it's a really, they get a certificate of completion, but it's not something that is like credited by a university or anything of that nature. But again, it's really the experience of being able to work with elected officials firsthand, being able to talk to leaders that they see on maybe different media platforms
Right.
directly, one-on-one with one another, and really seeing how diverse leadership can look in our communities.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great idea because a lot of the times when you think politics, you'd be like, oh my God, it's so freaking crazy and big and scary. But when you break it down to what it is, it's just technically just people and understanding them. And all of a sudden now you're getting them to see this and have empathy for other people. Then what can it be in their future later on that they can possibly contribute to society, right?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Neat. I like it a lot. We're running short on time, but thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it so much. When you were on your way over here, I don't know if I skipped. I kind of tried to stay in sequence of all the things you're part of. I don't know if I skipped anything, but as far as when you were driving over here, was there anything like, man, I wish he asked me about this, or I wish we talk about this? Anything that comes to mind?
You really covered everything. Thank you so much for being such a good host, and I was really impressed with just not only how you perceived the things that I was hoping people appreciated of the work that I do, but also just the research and the work that I've done. Just really be on the lookout for Somos Tejas. Honestly, like as somebody who's an immigrant, a lot of times we don't see ourselves in those executive spaces, and for me to have staff right now, to have our own office, to create the programs that we want to without having to ask anybody for permission is so beautiful that there are more people that can get to benefit from it and appreciate it. So follow Somos Tejas community. Like I said, there's two, Somos Tejas and Somos Tejas community. The community one is more community service centric. If you have any ideas on things that we should do, we're all open to it. February 21st, like I said, we're going to have a really cool event. Be on the lookout for it. If you want to apply to the scholarships internship program, it'll be a really cool program that I think I have really good students that will attest that they've really enjoyed the experience that we curate for them. And again, I think if anything, I just wanted to let my immigrant brothers and sisters know, like, this is our home. We are going to continue to fight for dignity, for freedom, to make sure that we're living without fear, and just very grateful to be here.
Two questions. First one is being a person that sometimes the status could be a little fragile or uncertain at times. Where do you get the courage to be able to push forward? Because a lot of the times we're talking about earlier, maybe arrest, and that could lead into all kinds of other stuff. Where do you get this courage to be able to push forward and be able to put yourself in that position? Because other people are citizens and everything else, and they'd rather just not watch from the sides instead.
I definitely give so much respect and appreciation to my parents. My parents, to me, were the first line of inspiration and one of the first reasons why I knew I had to fight for our community.
Right.
And then secondly, my community. Like, a lot of times it's so interesting how the people that you're fighting for are the people that you're being inspired by. And I say that because so much learning has come from just my community alone. Whenever I needed support, my community was there for me as well. And in our ecosystem, we say, el pueblo salva al pueblo, and it's very true. It's people like you, leaders that I see doing good work, and the fact that I can, run into your cava and be like, hey, what's good, brother? And then next thing you know, we're here. And it's so cool just to see, like, great people and great leaders doing amazing work. And I'm actually very humbled by, so many people that sometimes don't get enough credit. Like today I was having some chocolate at Joco Andre, and I'm like, man, that's some leaders right there that are always good people. And like whoever I work with, there's so much beauty and light in them that sometimes I think I get too much limelight and they don't get enough. And I think that's my inspiration.
Awesome. Sounds amazing. There's I was looking up our purchasing power for Latinos in the United States and how big it is. 4.1 trillion dollars, and the entrepreneurs in general, as much they're generating, also in the trillions as far as how much we contribute to. I say that I want you to be as honest as possible with your thoughts, your thoughts, your own words in regards to the things that are going on right now. They've been happening for the past 9 months in our community, and what can we do to kind of sort of have hope that things are going to get better, and what can they do when things are real questionable with people that are attacking them just by the way that they look.
Yeah, and I definitely understand the fear because I lived it myself, and it's been my community and my family has gotten me out of that fearful mindset or space. And it's okay to be afraid. Like, I don't want to say, oh, you have to put on this phase that you may not be there yet, but know that you're not alone, and know that they want us to be afraid because they're afraid of us. Ultimately, they're afraid of us. They're afraid of what it looks like if they were put in the same playing field as they are. And they, right now things are dark, but it's dark before the light in many cases. And we're going to win because we come from an ancestry that has been fighting, that has been winning. And I don't, adopt this term that we're colonized, because to me, the fight is still not over, and we're not done fighting. We're continuing to grow, and we're gonna win because also who they are. And so I would definitely say to continue living, continue finding joy. Joy is so important. I think right now people don't give enough credit to joy, and we can't allow them to take our joy away or for them to take us out of our center. So definitely, we're here for you. You're not alone, and yeah.
It's interesting what the news can amplify, because these times we've seen them before many years behind, but with the way the technology and the way that these media companies run, it's so easily for them to amplify the message of fear instead of knowing that this happened before and it's not new to us. And there's always we're bigger than that, and we're more powerful than that. But that energy and that panic that we enter into our minds puts us in a weird state of saying, be joyful and things like that. Yeah, there's stuff going on, but it has happened before. Let's pray for the best and just take some actions to be even better when this is all over.
Yeah, like Martin Luther King said, the moral arc is long, but it bends our way. And I feel that we're going to win. And they're afraid of us because they see our beauty, and they're afraid of how powerful we are. I think we owe it to our essence not to allow them to take that power away from us. And my goal and the goal of what we're doing is that they're gonna respect us or they're gonna fear us. I don't care how they take us, but our presence is undeniable. And the people that are with us, they respect us and they know who we are. The people that are against us, they're gonna fear us because they also are gonna realize our power. And I feel that it's one of those elements that I'm not here to placate or to make them realize or think that we're gonna shy away from being our most authentic selves. And yeah.
Awesome. Before I let you go, all your social media, once again, I know you mentioned it, but can you tell us again all your social media and I know February you have the event coming up, but any other events here in the near future?
Yeah, so Somos Tejas community. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. We're in pretty much every single, social media space. SomosTejas.org is our website. SomosTejasCommunity.org is for the community side. The big event that we're going to have, the first one is going to be in February. We're going to be launching our fellowship, the applications in December and January, so that we start the fellowship also in February. And yeah, just be on the lookout for us.
What is saludos? Any saludos you have for anybody? I know you were giving shout outs throughout the time, but anything else that you want to say? Saludos wise?
I mean, to mi papá, mi mamá, los quiero.
Of course.
Yeah, and honestly, for everybody from Oak Cliff, from our neighborhoods, Pleasant Grove, West Dallas, all the, hoods that have all the good food and all the flavors, I just want to say, yeah, this is for our people. All that we do is for our people.
What is it, a very important lesson that you learn doing Somos Tejas that you would tell your younger self that will help somebody else out? What would that be?
I think I learned the importance of grace and patience. And I think those are two words that live in the same room. And I say that because at first, when I was younger, I was a bit difficult on myself, a bit difficult on others. I lived more for this militant, we got to do it this way, and it has to go this way. And I think in this space of creation, we have to be very gracious with everyone, know that we're all fighting our battles and that we all just deserve some, grace in this space. And then, again, I think within that scope, you realize that patience, things don't happen in your time. A lot of times there's a divine and cosmic time that we don't understand yet, and that as long as you're doing right, you're in the right time. And yeah.
Awesome. And usually sometime throughout my day, I heard it a while back, but I really like this quote: I'm not immortal, I am mortal, and I will die one day. Not to scare me, terrorize me, or anything like that, but it makes me realize we are not here forever. But it also helps me hurry up and do things. With that, I wish you a very long and prosperous life. After everything's said and done, what do you want people to think and feel about your life?
My dad is the best way to describe him is que es un buen hombre. And I think whenever people are thinking of what they want to, I think greatness is thrown around too much, and people think, oh, that's what I want to be. I feel like it's better just to be good. Sometimes whenever you're great, you have to step over other people or try to be too overly, ambitious, and not ambitious in a bad way, but putting somebody down in order for you to be better. And I think just being a good person to our people, being good is. So quiero ser un buen hombre. Que diga, no, esa persona fue un hombre. Whether they saw me at a store or they saw me something, he was like, no, that's un buen hombre. So I just want to be un buen hombre.
Yeah. Amazing. Do you think this is what you're doing, the work you're doing, is your calling?
Very much so. Yeah.
Very much so.
I'm very, very much happy that I was able to find my gift, my talent, and I try to spend the most time to use it, rightfully so by my creator. And but this is what gives me life. So I think sometimes I don't have enough balance in my life where, I overwork myself or I don't give other parts of my life enough respect. But I'm glad that I found something that I can, wake up to and be happy that I'm doing, and be very happy to end my nights with,
I mean, since the first time I ran into you, we were doing something at that time that it included SB4. We were trying to bring awareness that this was happening, and we needed to do something. And my contribution is trying to put something together to put it out, and people can kind of sort of get informed. And that's how I ran into. I've seen probably following each other, mutual things, because a lot of times, like-minded people find each other, and we were seeing what you were doing. I'm like, oh, that's pretty neat. And then even in the short time when I was sitting with you, I'm like, oh wow, we didn't talk about that part when you were against Ren,
Sheriff Party in Arizona,
all the way over there and all that stuff, right? But that's also part of your journey in regards to being really out there and the courage to be. Look, bro, you so super inspired, and so the courage that you have in regards to what you do. Again, sometimes with the status being a little questionable, and I don't think I will be the one to get up there and do things, or other people, even as citizens, don't even get up and do the things that you do. I'm beyond proud of you, what you're doing, and I know the community itself appreciates it, and I know that in the long run, they're definitely going to see that of the work that you're done and the impact. Because sometimes, a lot of the times, we don't see what we've been working for after many years after. But I'm sure, and I hope that you be able to see the fruits of the labor, all the things that you've done with Somos Tejas and everything else. And without a shadow of a doubt, you are a Ramiro Luna-Hinojosa. You are a Global Latin Factor. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, brother. I appreciate you.
This was another episode of the Global Latin Factor podcast. Remember to subscribe right now. Man, you're getting such amazing, passionate individuals here on the podcast telling their story and great examples in the community that are doing things actively in the community. And remember, we are just like you. We are people. We are the spice and flavor in this melting pot that we call the world. Till next time.